Hello, my friends. So, this video is all about relationships as an art, as a form of energy exchange. And the real goal, the real prayer and desire that I have for what comes through in this video is to empower each of us as relational beings. Because at the end of the day, our entire life can be seen as the many iterations of relationships that we are having in our lives. We have a relationship to ourselves. We have a relationship to the earth. We have a relationship to our intuition, and we have a relationship to our love life, our partners, those that we're dating. We have a relationship to our friends, our sisters, our brothers, our coworkers, our collaborators. We have a relationship with our families. In essence, life is one big relationship, and the quality of your life will be based on the quality of your relationships. And what I wish for each and every one of us is to have relationships in our lives that nourish us, that help us to remember our truth, help us to remember who we really are, that support us, that we get to share our support, through our gifts, through our presence, through our love. So, a lot of this call is going to be about the dynamics of energy exchange because we are constantly giving energy in relationships and we're also receiving energy in relationships. And the best relationships are the ones where there is an equal exchange of energy. And that means that we have to realize that each and every one of us hold unique gifts, unique presence, unique reflections within our relationships. No one relationship is going to be the same. And no one relationship is going to ask of you to show up as the same version of yourself in them. And so how we show up at work is going to require a different set of tools and qualities within our energy. How we show up in our love life is going to require different qualities of energy. How we show up with our families will require a different quality of energy. And how we show up for our friends, that's all going to differ. And what's so important to remember is that the through line, the common denominator in all of these dynamics is you. And that is one of the most empowering things to remember about this path. It's that if you want to experience more love, pleasure, joy, bliss, intimacy, connection, depth, and vulnerability, and wisdom within your relationships, that is going to be a reflection of the energy that you are bringing into the relationship. And also the energy that is the standard in which you require for those in your life and the people that you are in relationship with, and the standard that you require in order for you to be in that relational field within that exchange. Within this means that we need to talk about energetic boundaries. We need to talk about the different ways that we can sometimes be in debt energetically in our relationships. We need to talk about an equal, fair exchange of energy. And we need to talk about how to refine and expand and amplify our relationships in our life so that ultimately we remember that we are not alone and that those in our lives that we choose to dance in the realm of life with are clear and accurate reflections and mirrors of who we are. And before we get into the aspect of, really nourished and intimate, beautiful relationships, which is one of the greatest gifts, truly, that we can experience in this life, we need to be honest about the ways in which some of those exchanges are currently not fully equal, not fully nourishing, and not fully aligned in our lives. This might resonate to some. It might be something that you're dealing with in your life, in a big way. Maybe you're not totally satisfied with the quality of relationships in your life. Maybe you're satisfied with some of those relationships. Like you might have a good relationship with your family and friends, but you might have challenges in the realm of love and intimacy and dating and partnership. Maybe you have no problems in the realm of partnership and dating and love, but you have problems with sisterhood or brotherhood or community. And so, in order for us to walk this way of intuition and walk in this empowered way where we like the people around us, where we are proud of, you know, the interactions that we have on a daily basis, where we feel fueled and energized by the presence of the people in our lives, we have to first and foremost look at two ways in which we are currently leaking energy in our relationships. And I would like to call this time debt and self debt. So, what is self debt? Self debt is when you go into energy deficiency, energy depletion, energy debt by certain relationships in your life. When you are depleted, when you are in debt to yourself in a relationship, that means that in some way you are compromising a value of yours. You are compromising some degree of self love, self worth, and self value in a certain set of relationships or dynamics that you currently hold in your life. And what this means is that in order for you to stay in one of those relationships in your life, be it a romantic one, be it a friendship, be it with a family member, be it with yourself, you have to start looking at where there is love for self that gets reflected back to you within this relationship and where there is a lack of that love. A lot of the time, as sensitive people, and I'm talking to you, a lot of times as compassionate empaths, as people who feel others at a very deep level, who have a lot of compassion, a lot of grace, who like to be of service to others, who like to be helpful, who like to give a lot of yourself, a lot of your energy, a lot of your guidance, your wisdom, your presence. We have to start looking at where there is reciprocity within those dynamics. Because within your relationships, when you hold a strong compass of self-worth and self-value, you know what you bring to the table. You know who you are, you know how you serve, you know the gift it is for you to show up in any space. You know that the presence that you hold within these dynamics, within relationship, within community is always a gift. Because when you love yourself and you remember yourself as an emanation of the divine, as someone who is showing up with a lot of love, then we have to start looking at the ways in which we might be going into self debt by certain relationships that we are outgrowing that maybe never really resonated with us fully, or that are not workable when it comes to where you're going in your life. And what I mean by a workable relationship is that all relationships cannot ever be expected to be perfect. Relationships are a school. It's where we learn the most about ourselves. It's where we learn the most about others. It's how we gauge the pulse of how we as a collective humanity are. Because how can you know where we're at as humanity other than by checking in on the people that we love? How would we know the state of the world other than understanding the state of our relationships? Because as above, so below. There's the microcosm of, your inner circle and the people that you are exchanging energy with on a daily basis or frequently in your life. And that is a representation of the greater whole. And just like, you know, how the greater whole is but a culmination of, each and every one of us and all of our relationships. It's almost like seeing ourselves as like a drop in an ocean, seeing the people we love as a drop in a collective ocean, and seeing that the entire ocean, which is the universe, lives in the drop, lives in you, lives in the people around you. We need to see how our relationships at the microcosmic level in our own personal lives impacts the greater whole. Because if we can have thriving relationships in our personal lives, then that energy, that frequency amplifies the greater whole. The state of how people relate to another shifts because we have shifted and contributed that healthy, thriving dynamic of relationship to the greater whole. An example of this that I can give is around love, intimacy, and partnership. So, as we know, you can probably think of in your life examples of partnerships, of dating, of relationships. Maybe it was even you that had this experience where there's a lot of force, there's a lot of fitting a square peg into a round hole. There's a lot of effort when it comes to just being in harmony and at peace within the relationship. Let's call this a secure attachment. Let's call this a secure, functioning relationship. And as we can see in the outer world, we know of many different relationship dynamics that are based in codependency, that are based in lies, deception, that are based in degrees of abuse, that are based in degrees of power dynamics, and in degrees of being a relationship because we're afraid of being alone, even when that relationship doesn't necessarily reflect the true nature of who we are. So we have these examples in our lives of when relationship isn't really working. The thing is, because relationships are not perfect, and we go to school within our relationships to learn about ourselves and the other, we must understand that sometimes relationships are exactly what I've said, a school. And that means that it's a practice ground for us to develop ourselves and develop the relationship in a way where we take, issues and challenges and problems and unconscious behaviors, and we heal. We learn to transmute them. We learn to bring, the shadow of relationship into the light. And I would call this a workable relationship. When a relationship is workable, that means that there is an equal, reciprocal exchange of desire to make the relationship a harmonious one, to make it a safe space for all that are in the relationship, and to make it a relationship that is reciprocal and ultimately nourishing. When a relationship is not workable, maybe because you've tried many times to be at peace within this relationship, you have constantly, forgiven, and you've constantly tried to change yourself from within to be able to show up better in this relationship. You've asked for your needs to be met. You're trying to make this relationship work in your life, whether it's romantic or unromantic. When a relationship has evidence over time that it is not workable, then that's when we go into the realm of self-debt. And we have to realize that that is a big energy leak in our lives. We have to realize that by holding in our energy field people that are not workable relationships that in some way drain us of our self-love, self-worth, and self-value, that drain us of our energy, that know how to take and that we know how to give to, but we're not necessarily receiving what we actually need in the relationship, that's when we need to be Jedis and ninjas and protectors of our energy and realize that the space that those relationships are taking up in your consciousness, in your psychic field, in your energy, in your life, are ultimately not serving your highest good. And when we allow ourselves to gracefully forgive these differences and let people go, create boundaries, close the tabs and close the chapters on some of the relationships that we are no longer in vibrational resonance to, that is a direct signal to the universe, a direct signal to your soul family that you are ready and that you have created space for the right, thriving, nourishing, workable, and reciprocal relationships that you are deserving of. So, my invitation to you is to check in with yourself and ask, where in my life am I compromising self in order to show up in this dynamic? Where might I be compromising a certain level of truth or values or needs or desires within my relationship in order to keep the peace, in order to not hurt another? Because most of the time, call this people pleasing. Most of the time, us sensitive people who are very loving, who have likely been very sensitive since we were children, and who love to see the good in people, will oftentimes be in relationships with people that are actually draining, where we're going into self-debt, where we're people pleasing. And that is because we are afraid of what it would mean to let those relationships go. What would it mean about ourselves? Are we afraid of being alone? Do we think that better relationships aren't on the horizon? In an abundance-based universe, energy is infinite. So anything that you close a door on is only going to open another. But I want you to see your energy field as something that is this bridge between your body and your higher self. And the more clear that channel, that column of energy and light is between your higher self and body, the more that your higher self can live itself through you, through your creativity, through your spiritual practice, through your relationships, through your daily, experience, through your well-being, through your health. And if we have certain blockages or we're holding some of those, dense, inauthentic, and misaligned relationships and energy in our field, it's creating distortion in our energy field. It's creating blocks. It's creating density so that energy is not able to move as, clearly, and it's not able to flow as much as it's meant to. So by you clearing yourself and being okay with ending some relationships that are no longer aligned to the true frequency of who you are now, this is an act of self-love. This is an act of self-honor because you're clearing the space for more alignment. You're clearing the space for more authenticity. You're clearing the space for more love. And the second type of debt that we will go into in relationships is time debt. This is a concept that's really important to notice in your life. Where are you giving one of your most precious resources that you have in this lifetime, which is your time? And time really is, a finite resource. We're all going to, transition and pass at some point in this life. And so when we look back on it, when we take our last breath, when we are at completion, in this lifetime, what we are going to look back on is how we spent our time and how we felt spending that time and who we were spending that time with. So, this idea of time debt is really important because then you can start to look at your life and see what is aligned. What is a good use of my time? When I give time to holding space for the people in my life, when I give my time to my job, my vocation, my purpose, when I give time to talking to people and having conversations, is it a good use of my time? Is there some level of reciprocity? Am I actually feeling nourished and receiving from this dynamic that I'm having? And maybe, we have to recognize that that exchange will differ throughout different seasons in our life. There might be some seasons where you need a lot of support because you're going through a lot. And maybe other people in your life that you're in relationship with are more resourced energetically, emotionally. Maybe they're in a really good place. And so they have more space to hold for you. They can support you because they feel supported themselves. And then maybe at some times you feel really resourced, and other people in your life are in struggle and they might have challenges. And your presence is a gift, it's a reminder of how they don't have to do this alone, how they are supported. And you remind them of their true power and their true worth and who they really are. You reflect the beauty that you see within them. So you see how this might fluctuate. It doesn't mean that exchange of energy always has to feel the same. It's not about 50-50. It always has to be equal. It's about when I'm down, can you help me lift up? When you're down, can I help you lift up? So, not to confuse, healthy relationship as something that needs to be perfect in every moment and perfectly balanced. But overall, if you really check in with yourself intuitively, you will be able to know without a shadow of a doubt overall which relationships feel like they're a balanced energy. Maybe the gifts that you give in that relationship are different than the gifts that you receive from the relationship. But at the end of the day, there are gifts involved. And the gifts might be emotional presence. It might be, support. It might be encouragement. It might be empowerment. It might be a listening ear. It might be hugs. It might be quality time. It might be words of affirmation, physical touch, all the different human needs that we have. Because at the end of the day, everyone's needs are usually the same. When we remove all the different games of the mind, we remove, the pressures of living in the material world. At the end of the day, what we all need more than anything, what our inner children need at every single stage of our lives, all we've really needed was connection. All we've really needed is a level of intimacy to the world around us. All we've really needed is to feel understood and to understand. And we can inherently know that in our relational field, who has the capacity for all of us, who has the capacity to see us from the highest lens, where you know that in this relationship, they are choosing to see you in your highest self. They are choosing to see you in your potential. They're not only seeing you in that, they're encouraging you to step into that greatness and that excellence. That's some of the greatest relationships that we can be in, when there is an encouragement within the relational dynamic that amplifies each other into our excellence, into our self-mastery, into our creative power. And if there are people in your life who choose to not see you in that greatness, who like to actually be more comfortable seeing you in an old version of yourself, who liked to see you when things were challenging, who have a hard time celebrating you when you're in your healing era, when you're in your greatness, then that is going into self-debt. and that is going into time debt. There is something that happens when our aura, when our energy field meets another. So it's you and the other. You come to that dynamic with your energy field, and they come to the dynamic with their energy field. And when you come together, it creates that Vesica Pisces, that merging point of opposites where, you blend. It becomes the third entity. In any relationship, you have to see that there's you, the other, and then there's the third person, there's the third entity, which is a combination of the two forces, two energy fields, two auras, two magnificent beings coming together. And sometimes that third energy is even more powerful than the individual energy, because you're bringing two people's amazing presence and gifts and strengths and weaknesses and desires and dreams and goals, and you're putting it together. And it becomes this powerful field where much more can get accomplished, much more can be amplified, where creativity is, amplified much more than when we're trying to do things alone. And even in partnership, there's that third entity. When you are around a couple that is, workable, that is secure functioning, that is sovereign as individuals, but choosing to come together as, that third entity, that's a healing frequency. That is a healing energy in this world. The power of union, the power of souls coming together, soulmates, aligned beings that have come together with a purpose individually and together, creates this overarching field that is very healing for the world, because the opposite is feeling disconnected from each other. It's feeling isolated. It's feeling alone. And that healing energy of togetherness, that oneness, that intimacy, that connection reminds us of where we actually come from. Because when we return to the spirit realm, that is all spirit realm knows. It's oneness, it's union, it's non-separateness. Separateness is an illusion of the third dimensional reality of the material world. It's a part of being in Earth School. We feel separate from others, we feel separate from our creator, and thus we go on the hero's journey to drink from the river of forgetfulness in some way, to think that we're separate, to think we're on these individual journeys, only to remember that actually we are but a drop in a collective ocean, and the entire ocean is within the drop. And when you have that Vesica Pisces, when you have the two energies coming together, and you can almost see that exchange, when you see two people standing in front of each other having an exchange, when you are in touch with sensitive, subtle energy, you can feel if there are power dynamics at play, where one person might be taking energy, draining energy without giving anything in return. And you might see how, in another case, someone is pouring their energy into another. It's, trying to get the other to be in, their experience. And this might happen when someone's like totally emotionally dumping on you without actually checking in on your state of energy. If it's actually, a safe space for you to be in, if you are a resource, if you have the capacity, if you've given consent and permission to hold space in that moment. So I want you to see that some of these sort of shadow interactions, these relationships that are still in the shadows, that are not really balanced, you will notice in the dynamic, if you just even notice it within yourself, where do I feel a drain of energy when I'm around this person? And when do I feel like maybe this person is trying to dump their energy onto me? And the healthy form of that, a healthy energy dynamic, is when there is enough energy boundary between you two to know where you end and they begin. That is a practice that we need to start developing somatically, especially those of us who have been known to be empaths, sensitive people, intuitive people. Because oftentimes, through our empathy, through our sensitivity, we can actually, like almost like a microscope, get merged with other people's energy, where we sometimes even lose ourselves. You might have an interaction and be so immersed in someone else's energy because you didn't know where they began and you didn't know where you began. You became one with them in a way that was not actually healthy for you. And this will show up sometimes because unless we know our center, unless we can be full with ourselves, not full of ourselves, but full with ourselves, then we might be full of another. We might be, living in a way where the opinions, the perspectives, the ideas of our parents, our family, our community, our partner, our friends are actually what is filling our consciousness and awareness. So much that we're not even sure, what is true for us and what is our own consciousness. And that's when we need to start really playing with energy boundaries, psychic maintenance, psychic hygiene to really, really understand how to come back to self so we can remember what is ours, so that we can come into the world more resourced. We're not giving from a drained place. We're not giving to those who are not giving to us. We are not in unequal and unreciprocal energy exchanges. Having this awareness is life-changing because to know where you begin and someone else ends, to practice in live time in your interactions with people, playing with that energy, literally feeling and making sure that boundary, that there is, a limit to how much you can give of yourself and how much you're willing to receive from another is going to change your life because you're no longer leaking your energy. You're going to have more energy to funnel into your dreams, your desires, your reciprocal relationships, your self-care. You're not spending too much of your limited energy budget on a daily basis, draining yourself through self-debt and time debt. You are being more masterful with your energy. How will you know within your relationships and within your interactions if your energy is compromised? How will you know if this dynamic or this relationship is influencing you in a way where there is time debt or self debt? How can you recognize when this is happening? So, there are many different symptoms of the energy debt and the time debt. You might feel that within certain energy exchanges or certain conversations or certain relationships, you might feel sudden shifts in your mood. You might be aware of how you felt before you went into that interaction, and then you feel how you have shifted. Your mood has shifted based off of having that interaction. Your emotional state might have changed for no apparent reason or cause, which is why it's so important that before interacting with, those in our lives, it's cool to check in prior to the conversation, prior to the meeting, prior to hanging out, prior to entering the event, prior to entering the community, prior to seeing your partner. Check in with how you're feeling first. Because if you know how you're feeling, if you are in your center, you are aware of the experience that you are having somatically in your body, then you know what is not in resonance with that. You know what is not yours. And this doesn't mean that we can't show up with levels of empathy and connection and intimacy. We don't necessarily have to avoid, other people's experience and their moods just because they're different than ours. But it's important to be able to hold space for another while not letting that necessarily impact the experience that you're having in your body. And this is such a key to remember in energy dynamics, energy exchanges, that your body is actually the indicator of how you feel in an interaction. If you feel like you're bracing for something, if you feel shut down, if you feel tired, sluggish, if you feel contracted, if your heart is tender, if you feel low and like you have a weight on you, if you're sinking, if your body feels discomfort in being in certain dynamics, then your body is telling you there is a mismatch in the dynamic, and that ultimately your body is suffering energetically from that dynamic. Whereas when you are in resonance with someone, your nervous systems are co-regulating in a way where you actually feel more at peace. You feel that there's space for both of you as individuals to exist without merging, without becoming codependent in energy. You both feel sovereign while still not taking away from the opportunity for intimacy and connection. But in your body, you feel a sense of safety. You're, having regulated breath. You feel a sense of calm. You feel a sense of ease. You feel inherently safe in your body. You might even feel uplifted, activated, expanded, fired up in a passionate, supportive way because of this energy dynamic. So it's really important to check in with body as the indicator of where you're at in relationships, because anything that's coming outside of the body might be mind. And mind is not necessarily the best indicator of like where we need to have boundaries, who is for us or who isn't for us, because the mind will go in circles, creating excuses, talking ourselves into why, we shouldn't have boundaries because they're actually this, and because of this history. It's going to come up a whole set of reasons why you shouldn't listen to your body. And it's going to try to rationalize and use logic to tell you what this relationship is. But the body doesn't lie. Your body will tell you when you are comfortable and safe and secure. Your mind will try to convince you otherwise, especially if you have not integrated or healed aspects of your psyche that are still based in the patterns of people pleasing, of putting other people's needs before your own, of getting into energetic or time debt and having that be something normalized in your life. Your mind is not the best indicator of what's actually happening, but your body will tell you if you feel safe or not. And in this case, what I would suggest is that if you care about these relationships, if it's something that feels workable, because remember, there are relationships that are workable, where it's school, where you are learning, there are lessons, there's ways that you can teach each other to love each other more, then it's workable. And that's where you get to practice asking for your needs to be met. That's where you get to put limits on your time. That's where you get to express your needs in the relationship. That's where you get to ask for more of what you need. If you're giving a lot of, presence and you're holding a lot of space, make sure that you're asking within these workable relationships for that to be reciprocated. And if it isn't workable, don't try to convince yourself otherwise. One of the greatest things that I have learned in my life is that it is okay to be the bad guy in someone else's story if that means that I am loving myself and valuing my energy. Because with the right people, what's true for me, what's in my highest good will always be in the highest good of them. And what's in their highest good will always be in the highest good of me. An example of that is, having plans with someone. You might have made those plans a week ago. And maybe the time of the plan has shown up. You're scheduled to hang out with this person. And for you, you realize that in this moment, You don't feel the same emotionally or energetically. You're not as resourced as you were when you made those plans. And because of that, you actually feel that what would serve the highest good of you and the other is that you take time for yourself, that you actually get to a place where you feel resourced from within so that next time you hang out, you can show up more as yourself. And so you cancel plans. And so you kindly, share where you're at in a truthful way, and that it's not personal. And it's more so of you caring for yourself. When I do that and that's received by the other and it's celebrated and they're like, yes, thank you for like taking care of yourself, that shows me that that person is resourced. That shows me that this person isn't codependent or needing of my energy in order to feel whole. Whereas if someone gets upset with you, or someone makes you feel in subtle or obvious ways guilty about choosing yourself or taking care of yourself, that might be an indicator that someone is using your energy as a means to feel okay about theirs. And of course, there's nuance to this. If you're someone who's always canceling plans with the same person consistently, then that's also an energy drain for them because they're creating space to, you know, connect with you. They're carving out time in their schedule to create connection with you. And if you keep, not showing up and not valuing their time or their efforts to show up in this relationship, then that's an opposite energy drain. So, of course, there's energetic nuance to all of this. It is situational, it is subjective. And check in with yourself to really ask, what is the truth of this situation? And how does me honoring myself honor the other? How does me being authentic honor the other? Because when you're not honoring yourself, you can't be showing up authentically. You're cutting off certain limbs. You're in energetic debt. You're in time debt with yourself. And then to bring that into a dynamic and force yourself into that dynamic, maybe you won't fully be present. Maybe the conversation won't be as loving and supportive as it could be if the two of you chose a more divine timing where both parties are more resourced. So, other indicators that you are in an energy debt or time debt is after these interactions, it's like you feel drained. You don't feel necessarily energized by it. You don't feel nourished. You don't feel like, wow, I am so grateful that a person of this kindness and this love and their ability to see me is in my life. Because most of the time, when you have a really good hangout or you go to a really aligned event or an aligned, community that you're around, aligned and reciprocal energy, you will in some way feel peace in the body, peace in the spirit. And so sometimes this will also show up as physical symptoms. You might actually experience around some people or some environments headaches. You might get migraines. You might get stomach aches. You might feel queasy or nauseous. This is your body telling you that it's not actually something that you ate. It's not something that has to do with like physiological symptoms based off of like your own health and your own system, but more so that you were consuming energy that was not in resonance to your energy field, that was not supportive, not, reciprocal, and you consumed, you became that density, you became that energy. That person poured some of, their energy that they're processing into you, and you didn't have the boundaries, and they also didn't know how to hold their own boundaries. And now you have physical ailments based off of that. The last thing that I will say is that being in a good partnership, being in healthy relationships, having the right community by your side, having really powerful sisterhoods and brotherhoods, whether that's a ton of them or just a small circle in your life, should ultimately help you to feel more like yourself. You should walk away from those interactions feeling like the true essence of you was given space to exist in that dynamic and in that environment, and that all of it was welcomed, all of it was accepted, all of it was, in some way safe for you to be those things. And you might even feel like a surge of focus, of creativity, of productivity. You might feel a surge of being connected to your purpose because you're around other people who are in alignment with you, because they're your soul family. And soul family always guides us towards purpose, towards more love, towards more peace, towards more liberation. That's what we're all doing for each other. With this, I'm going to bring in this awareness that we need to have as sensitive people, as maybe some of you are space holders, maybe some of you are preparing to be space holders. Ultimately, when you become more full of yourself, when you are filled with your unique frequency, that immediately triggers more impact in the world. You are creating things that create a bigger ripple in the world, whether it's locally, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your partnership, whether it's to your clients, whether it's to your business, whether it's to your team or communities. When you are in alignment, which is ultimately what this entire course is about, it's getting you to be a channel for your authentic, soul destined, aligned frequency to live through you embody. When you are in that essence, it's immediately going to attract and magnetize more people in your life. More people are going to ask things of you. More people are going to call upon your energy. More people are going to ask for your guidance. More people are going to love being around you because you love yourself. It's radiance, it's magnetism. It's just the nature of good energy. People like to be around that. So then another aspect of this is becoming aware of the degrees to which you are available to the people who like being in your energy. There are different layers that you can set up as energetic boundaries in your life. Who has access to you from the deepest vulnerable things that not everyone has access to? That's your closest, like soul family, like familial connection. It might even be physical family. Who, is on the outskirt of that? Who do you love so much that you consider to be really close friends and that you are going to prioritize in your life? Because we only have a certain amount of time budget in our lives. When we're taking care of ourselves, when we're in our purpose, in our dharma, when we're creating, when we're taking care of our health, when we're doing all of these things, like that creates some level of, selectivity with where we direct our energy. We have to be protective of the budget of energy that we are given, which is finite, and we have to be smart about the energy exchanges that we have. Now, who has priority to that? Who do we want to have consistent, interactions with? Who do we want to have hour-long phone calls with? Who do we want to set up time in our schedule to spend, time with? Who do we want to hang out with? Who do we want to go on weekend vacations with? Who would we call when we are going through something? That's going to be, your inner circle. They're going to have access to you in ways that maybe other people don't. And then there's other layers of closeness. There's acquaintances. There's people that you like, when you have time to develop more connection with. Maybe you see that there's a lot of potential to have relationship with these people, but they are acquaintances. There isn't enough history to say that it's necessarily soul family, familial, or, priority. But when you have more spaciousness in your life, you can carve out some space to get to know some of these acquaintances, to create space for more connection with them. And then who is on the outskirts of that? Who are you maybe interacting in a way where it's a part of your art, it's a part of your service, it's a part of your work? And there's a closeness and there's a resonance to that. There is a connection that's happening, but you might not necessarily need to respond to like every direct message, for example, to everyone. Because if you were to do that, you would not have enough energy for yourself. You would not have enough energy for your soul family. You would not have enough energy for your inner circle. And this is not a mean thing. It's not a hierarchical thing. It's the reality of the preciousness of the time we are given in this life and the preciousness of our energy. And we have to navigate that way masterfully. We need to navigate our energy budget masterfully. We need to see where there's reciprocity. We need to see where there's windows of time that are devoted to these different layers of connection. Because maybe, your family, your soul family takes up 40% of your life. Maybe, your self-care takes up 40% of your life. And then maybe 10% or the other 10% is allocated to different things. And that's just a little example. You get to decide what energy you're allocating to your relational dynamics. But some of us are walking around completely unaware of how to structure our relational dynamics, how to structure our energy, where to have boundaries. We're an open vessel for anyone and everyone. And that's when we find ourselves in energy deficit. That's when we find ourselves in depletion. That's when we don't have enough time to care for ourselves. The last question of this video is, how can I create energetic boundaries in my relationships and in my interactions? That's the big question, right? Because we're here learning about the reality of energy exchange. We're learning about the different subtle energies and the different ways to navigate our relational field, which is everything. The quality of our lives is a reflection of the quality of our relationships. Who we choose to journey within this life will change the trajectory of your life. It's 100%, something that impacts you, which is why this is so important. And so, what are the different ways that we can navigate the world and navigate our journeys in a way with these energetic boundaries in our relational dynamics? And one of the ways, first and foremost, the foundation is self-awareness. To understand your center, to be full with yourself. Because if you're not full of yourself, then you're full of the matrix. You're full of other people's expectations. You're full of other people's opinions and perspectives. And so to understand your own energy, to understand your own emotions is everything, because from that place, you know how to navigate life and relationship in a way that is in service to your highest good, where there is reciprocity, where there is nourishment, where there is pure alignment. And not knowing yourself, not knowing, your own energy system, not knowing your sensitivity, not knowing what you need in relationships will be how you end up in relationships that are out of balance. So we must prioritize self-awareness, the consciousness that we are tapping into. You cannot unsee, you cannot unhear, and you cannot unknow, you cannot unfeel. So just trust that it's already happening. Trust that it's here. Just be receptive to it. Be open. Trust that there's already change shifting within you. You don't have to necessarily do more. It's about being receptive. It's about remembering some of these universal laws and this ancient wisdom that our ancestors knew, that, we know to actually be true, but that none of us really taught in school, but that we're remembering again with our soul family and with each other. So self-awareness is number one. The other is to set intentions, set clear intentions with yourself about your relationships. When you enter social situations, when you enter events, gatherings, when you enter your workplace, set clear intentions about what you want to feel in that space and in these interactions and in these relationships. and what energy you'd like to maintain within the interactions so that this can act as a structure, a container, a guide for navigating the interactions so that you can see very clearly, well, what's not in alignment with my intentions for why I'm here? Anything that's not really aligned with that, I can have boundaries with because I'm not available for that right now. I didn't dedicate this time, this window of presence and this window of my presence and my time for this thing. I devoted it to this. And of course, there's nuance to the mystery and the fluidity of relationship. We can't always know how exactly things are going to be. And sometimes, interactions and relationships will take us into spaces that we couldn't even imagine. That's one of the beautiful things about relationships, that there's a level of mystery, and that Vesica Pisces, two people coming together, creates that third entity. So you can't necessarily control what an interaction is going to be because it's you, but also what the other is bringing in their needs. But what you can do is check in with yourself consistently through the interaction and see if you're still available for this. So, setting clear intentions about your why, about what you want to feel, about what you need, what some of your preferences might be, is so important. And to also create space for the other person's needs and preferences to exist. And that's the beauty of relationship. That's the beauty of the dance of finding harmony between opposites. There's a way to create space for all of it to belong when you're speaking about aligned relationships, workable relationships, and harmonious relationships. Lastly, we need to learn how to say no. We need to learn how to say no. I feel a lot about how important this is. It's so simple, yet so many of us are not given the permission to do so in our lives. In order for us to not be in self-debt and time debt, in order for us to have energetic boundaries in our relationships and in our interactions, we have to learn how to say no when it's necessary. We need to learn which invitations and commitments are a yes and which invitations and commitments are a no. Because by saying no, you create more space for your yes. By saying no, you show up authentically. By saying no, you're actually loving people more because you're not showing up to spaces from an inauthentic, forced place. You're not draining your energy or compromising your truth, your values, your well being in order to say yes. So that when you say yes, it actually means something. That's actually the most important thing about your nose. It's that it creates stronger yeses. That if you are not drained by being spread thin and stretched with your schedule, stretched with your relationship, stretched with how many people you're allowing into your inner circle, then it gives you space to say yes fully to the things that are really aligned. Your whole presence is there. You're resourced energetically, you're resourced physically, mentally, emotionally. You can show up to that thing as yourself. You're more present, you're more available for connection. And then yeses become really aligned pillars and checkpoints in your life. When you're saying yes to a bunch of things that are like lukewarm, close to what you actually need in the current season of your life, then you're spread thin. But if you are selective and you really seek quality of experiences, then you will experience quality connection and quality relationship and quality, time with yourself. Because at the end of the day, when we're speaking about the relational field, which is what this video is about, ultimately, the number one relationship that you are having is with yourself, because your relationship with yourself is creating the mirror of reality of everything else. You will magnetize and attract relationships, opportunities, abundance, invitations, pleasure, bliss, adventure, all of the really beautiful things in this world, health, by self-awareness, by valuing yourself, by knowing thyself, and by from that place meeting the world. And that is so important to speak to. I'm going to end this video by speaking to how important it is specifically to this community of empaths and intuitives that a lot of the time, one of the shadows that we hold is that we are so in tune with other people's experiences, other people's emotions, other people's beliefs. We feel them. We're psychic. We are absorbing it all. Because of that, a lot of the time our energy can be pulled in a way where we're attuning our frequency, attuning our consciousness, attuning our bodies to match someone else. And that shows up in interactions where you feel like maybe the other person is talking more and you're just, space holding and you're really good at listening, but you're not necessarily sharing more of you. You're not bringing your storytelling to the table. You're not allowing yourself to be seen. You're not asking for your needs to be met. And so a lot of the time, us empaths in our interactions will be consistently merged with other people's experiences, where we sometimes lose our own. We lose our sense of core. We lose our sense of body, somatic reality. We lose our sense of our own stories and our own opinions and our own perspectives and our own needs. So that is the invitation here for all of us to, from here on out, ask ourselves, what would it be like to live a life where we invite other people's into our frequency, where we invite other people into our world? Let them see through our eyes, not because we want to take their energy, not because we want them to merge with us completely, that they lose themselves, but because we have something beautiful to contribute to. We have something to give. Our perspectives are beautiful. Inviting someone into your world, inviting someone into your energy and your frequency is a gift. That's how art is born. That's how any great creative thing was born. You're essentially creating a path. You're essentially creating, a frequency in the real estate of the energetic world where you get to be full of yourself and your ideas, your visions, your art, your creativity, and your sense of beauty, your sense of perspective of the universe. And you invite those who actually want to take part in that, those who want to be immersed in the experience, those who want to witness you and witness your artistry, and those who will benefit and be supported by being invited into your energy, your frequency, your perspective. And that is a result of us understanding the gift of our energy. That is a result of understanding that we have much to contribute. That, is this realization that, of course, there's nothing to prove. We don't have to prove that our perspective and that what we have to offer is worth it. When you stop trying to prove and you just ask yourself, how can I serve? How can I contribute? How can I be a channel? How can I create art? How can I just be a conduit of the truth and allow whoever wants to take part in that? Trusting that that's a gift, trusting that you also have the ability to invite others into that world, into that frequency for as much of time or as little of time as you want them to, and as much of time or as little of time they want to. So I really felt that that was important to bring in, because I know in my own journey, something that I really dealt with in my relationships and in dynamics and in leadership and space holding and in community, it's like I can show up really, really well for others. And in the past, I've been really attuned to other people's, visions and their excellence. And I'm a great reflection in that way. I can see people for their gifts and their mastery. And where my work has been was to understand that that also lives in me, and to understand that I also have the ability to allow others to see me in that, to allow others to experience more of myself, to take up more space in the room, to take up more space in my body, to stand in a presence where I'm actually not contracting my energy or trying to hide my energy, make it smaller in order to amplify in others, but to play an equal presence of energy in the space. Not so much that you try to take up all the energy in the space, but so that you are showing up in the grace of your authentic nature, the full capacity of you, just as you would want everyone else to do the same.